Well, thank you all for such a warm welcome and for having me here today on such a cold day. It's actually a lot nicer than it was yesterday, fortunately enough for us, I guess. But as Mary mentioned before, NASSP, my organization, does work very closely with NAESP, our partner organization, the National Association of Elementary School Principals. I am the manager of advocacy there. I'm actually very new, about 2 months in, but I have been handling education issues for quite some time now on Capitol Hill, about over 2.5 years. Looking to move that forward here. I did put my Twitter handle up here as well. If you follow me, you can actually also follow at NASSP and at NAESP. We tweet very often about things influencing principals, what's happening now today, and what's going to be moving forward with them as well. So if you want to follow me or any of our other advocacy team members up there, that would be probably beneficial for all of you to see as we keep highlighting what's going on with principals here in the future. So once again, just a quick breakdown of my organization. The National Association of Secondary School Principals is the leading organization and voice for middle and high school level leaders from across the United States and over 35 countries around the world. It's founded in 1916, so we actually just celebrated our centennial, so that was very exciting this year for our organization. Really pumped up about that. We really enjoyed that. So we actually want to kind of move forward here. What I really want to do when starting this conversation of how are we going to train effective principals, I kind of want to start off with the idea of what makes an effective principal today. What do principals need to know to help drive student achievement and be better at their jobs? And that's what kind of you're all wondering as well, obviously, helping train principals and get them prepared to go into a very difficult job market. So recently, NASSP partnered with a number of outside organizations to come up with the professional standards for educational leaders. I actually provide a link to it here in my presentation. I'll make sure that Mary has this so that she can put this on the links that you guys all have access to this as well. I have lots of links that you can all look at in your own spare time because I'm sure you have so much of that nowadays, but that way you guys can take a look at it. But what we really wanted to do here was look at how the role of a principal is evolving. And we hadn't changed these ideas of what a principal needs in about 10 years. And we looked at it now and we said, the role of a principal in 2014, 2015, 2016 is a whole different role. It's not just being a disciplinarian anymore like it used to be in the past, or just talking with teachers as it was before. It's, it's being a leader, it's helping your teachers, it's dealing with students' mental health more than ever. I think we see now is a very important method. So we really wanted to have these guidelines out here so that you can see what these need to be. And these are supposed to be a guiding force to states and leadership prep programs to help them identify the specific knowledge, skills, and attributes that principals need. And that's what we want you guys to take. So I'm not going to go through all of these right now. The idea here is, though, that all of these are tied in with one another, and they all go into student learning, and actually student learning can help promote all of these back out. That should be the ultimate goal for any principal in the end, is how do we advance student learning and student achievement in the best way possible. And I think that these different methods and ways here and attributes are really a good way to do that. So if you all want to take some time in the future to take a look at that, I think you'll be very impressed with what we came up with here. So we're going to talk about ESSA today, the Every Student Succeeds Act. We finally got rid of No Child Left Behind. I think everybody's pretty excited about that. Excited is a good word. Nervous is another word. It's never easy when you have a new piece of legislation that nobody's dealt with before. I think everybody's even a little more nervous due to Tuesday's results, but that's a whole other can of worms we're not going to open here today. So I want to talk about ESSA here. ESSA has 9 main titles. I'm going to focus mainly on 2. Title II, which is Preparing, Training, and Recruiting Teachers, Principals, and Other School Leaders, and Title IV, the 21st Century Schools area. I am going to go into just a little basic information on Title I, just because I think it's important that all of you are aware currently what your state organizations like NJPSA are currently doing to help with making accountability measures and things like that. So as we keep moving along here, the timeline for implementation, if I can get it out today, for ESSA. So in 2015, President Obama signed ESSA into law. They have a request for information from states. States are going to be called upon to make their own accountability systems now. And this is kind of a really big change from No Child Left Behind, where Department of Ed kind of decided the accountability systems, passed them down to the states, and they could vote on their own, but now they actually have to go in and develop their own. and they have to have certain rules and measures to do that the Department of Ed is still looking at. And this is an ongoing process that's happening right now, at least it should be happening right now if you're state. And if it isn't, you probably want to get on them a little bit to talk to you about that. But I'll go into that in a little more information here in just a little bit. My organization actually submitted submitted comments to the Department of Education inquiring on what are the best ways for this implementation to go through, what are you trying to find. Still hasn't gotten a complete answer yet. It's a little vague, but we're hoping for some more information in the next couple of weeks here on what they're looking for. So on August 1, flexibility waivers expired for ESSA. Those are what allowed states to kind of go outside of their own waivers here. On that same day, actually, they were supposed to start forming their new accountability systems. Now, the Department of Education recently issued many non-binding guidances on parts of ESSA that help to break this down since we first had this happen. There have been guidances on Title II Part A, Title III, Title IV, Title I school-wide guidance, a homeless student guidance, and foster care guidance. So those are all things that can be used by all of you to go look at what are the proper ways to implement ESSA here. And actually I have a link once again at the bottom down here, as you can see, that you can follow, that you can go look at all of these guidances. Typically they're about 40 to 50 pages, but they do a very nice job of breaking down the titles themselves. Trust me, you might not want to read the titles themselves. They're a little boring, and there's not a whole lot of excitement in there. But states are actually working right now to submit their comprehensive plans for the 2017 and 2018 school year. There actually has been a movement by most states to actually try to push that back to 2018, 2019. As I was saying before, the Department of Ed has been somewhat vague on how they're going to judge these systems. What they don't want to do is, most states don't want to have a system, try to put it in, spend all this work on it, suddenly the Department of Ed come back and say, not good enough, got to get it better. So it's kind of, we want to measure twice, cut once, basically. So that's the idea that most states are taking, but that also gives them a limited timeline with this. So this movement has been moving forward. NASSP is currently talking with our state members to figure out exactly what we want to do in this situation, as well as NASSP. But we're curious to see, looking forward, if Ed is going to grant this. But oh, actually did not want to click on that, but that's okay. It's a quick return. So the consultative process. As I was saying before, states must submit a Title I plan to the Department of Education using consultation with stakeholders. And I'm actually going to go into what these stakeholders are here. These stakeholders actually include governors, state legislators, state board of education, superintendents, teachers, parents, Indian tribes, and principals. So principals need to be at the table when their states are developing these Title I plans. And this is crucial for principals overall. When states are developing these plans, these principals need to have a seat at the table saying, this is what we need in our schools, this is what the difficulties and the challenges that my school are facing, and this is what I think our state should be focusing on here. And as we always say, nobody knows a school better than a principal back in my organization. So it's important to know that these principals are able to sit down and actually talk with their state education agencies and tell them this. Now, state education agencies are required to bring principals in here. We're not sure how many actually are. It's kind of difficult to get a tab on them all the time. That is why it needs to be a grassroots program by principals to kind of get out and make sure they're letting their SEAs know, we want to be at the table here, we need to be part of this. This needs to be a collaborative effort for everybody involved in education in each state to really understand what needs to be done here. So as I was saying, this is actually a new way of doing this, kind of a bottom-up approach. It's still going to go top-down from the Department of Ed as they get improvement, but giving states this local control was a really popular idea of ESSA, and a lot of people really enjoyed the idea of being able to give that local control back to the states here. So hopefully that can continue to be a better way of doing business here than we've seen in the past. Just using the federal government to kind of control education hasn't always worked as well in the past as we've seen in some situations, so we're hoping kind of having that local touch on it and being able to get principals in the same room as their state education agencies can kind of drive a movement forward here and really help these areas. So in the meantime, though, the Council of Chief State School Officers has been helping states get in contact with their SEAs. Like I said, we're not sure how far along some are, how many have actually reached out to principals and their principal organizations. We know for a fact, actually, NJPSA, fortunately enough, has been working with the state of New Jersey to develop theirs, so that's a great sign. We have a couple other ones that are doing really well. Illinois, I know Michigan has been in contact with theirs. But overall, for all of all of you that are at different states, I would make sure you touch base with your state education agency and make sure they are aware that you are paying attention to what's going on with these Title I accountability plans here. So, as I was saying before, this is happening right now, so this is very important. But like I was saying, I want to focus a little bit on Title I here. This is just going to be a quick focus on Title I. We're going to mainly focus on Title II. So, states have to develop these plans with ambitious goals, and they have to focus on all student subgroups, so your English language learners, your minority students. But what are these ambitious goals is kind of the question here. So when we look a little closer here, there are some mandatory performance goals that have to be judged as a requirement of the Department of Education. Academic achievement on assessments, high school graduation rates, and progressing and achieving English language proficiency. So those are the three that are required. Each state is going to have to measure by themselves, basically. There's no way they can't measure these, otherwise the Department of Ed won't accept it. But they also offer one additional indicator, and this is kind of where it gets a little interesting for states, as they get to choose what that additional indicator is going to be. The popular ones that we've heard talked about are student engagement, educator engagement, student access to and completion of advanced coursework, remedial courses, college courses, post-secondary readiness, and school climate and safety. These aren't all of the ones that can be listed. These are just some of the ideas that can be listed. I'm sure states are looking at more. States can get very creative when you give them a room like this, which is great. We want to see creative solutions to difficult problems, and I think this indicator is an opportunity to do that. Now, that being said, as you can see in the little thought bubble here, this should be something that principals are at the table considering as well in each of your states. They should be looking at this and saying, what are ways that we can advocate that can help us and help our schools drive this forward? So this should be an opportunity for your principals at that stakeholder table to sit with one another and say, this is something important that we need to look at, and what we think is the most important thing that should be assessed by our state overall. So that's a very good opportunity for advocacy for principals in these areas. I think that's something that you should all look at and sit down with your principals and your groups and just say, this is something we as a group need to consider when we talk with our SEAs and our state education agencies, basically. So Title II, now we're getting kind of into the meat here of the presentation. So I want to start off, this is actually a chart from EdWeek up here. EdWeek is a very popular education piece that's on the internet that's written out in Washington, D.C. Great work. If you've never taken a look at it, they're wonderful. Really break down things really well in the current system of what's going on. So this is kind of the difference from No Child Left Behind to ESSA right now. So we're looking at the federal appropriation of authorization of NCLB. It was originally $3.2 billion, but its current funding is at $2.3 billion. So it's the same thing for ESSA right now. And if you go down No Child Left Behind, you can see that states basically have, if you look over, I guess on the other side, 2.5% for higher ed leadership can be reserved or must be reserved under No Child Left Behind. Not a big number. ESSA actually provides more opportunities to have this funding kind of reserved for school leaders and things of that nature. So they can reserve 1% for administration, they can reserve 3% for school leader activities, and they may reserve up to 2% for preparation academies. So that should make everybody here pretty happy and excited. So that's one thing to look at here. That's very important to know. So moving forward here, there are some changes for school leaders under Title II in ESSA. Like I said before, this is an area that focuses on recruiting and training principals here. ESSA includes a reservation of funds under the School Leader Recruitment and Support Program. And this is a new competitive grant program that is being developed under ESSA. We actually, my organization, worked very closely with Senator Franken and Representative Susan Davis out of California to help make sure that this information was included in the bill. This is very important, we think, to have these grants set aside there. This program, as I'm sure you all are all aware, replaces the school leadership program. And Obama originally requested an FY 2017 budget of $30 million for this. It's funny that now the election is over, Congress can finally go back to work. Everybody can kind of laugh at how much Congress really works. But so now that Congress is going to come back, the first thing they're going to focus on here is funding the government. Current funding, they passed a short-term continuing resolution, or CR, at the end of September. That funds the government through December 9th. So the first thing they're going to need to do is have these budget talks of what is our funding bill going to look like moving forward. December 9th is coming up very quickly. There are only 16 legislative days left in the House of Representatives this year. So that time is coming. So those debates are going to come quickly and effectively. So this is an opportunity for advocacy. And you're going to hear me mention this a lot today with this quick moving budget appropriations, how advocacy is going to play a huge role from your organizations and from principals in the grassroots here and trying to convince their members that they need to allocate these funds correctly. ESSA, all these funds in ESSA sound really great. However, in the House and Senate appropriations bills that we've seen, none of them actually have matched what ESSA thought was going to be authorized for the funding. So if we want ESSA to be implemented effectively, those funds need to be allocated there. Otherwise, it's just not going to be effective, and we're going to run into the same problems we ran into with No Child Left Behind. Asking people to do more with less, and that just hasn't worked in the past for us, and we don't think it's going to work in the future. So being able to advocate with your members of Congress, with your state governments, with even your local governments, your local school districts, to find a way to kind of push the idea of this funding forward is very important here. So ESSA also codifies the definition of school leader to mean a principal or an assistant principal in the school. It originally is what ESSA had it as. We actually, NASSP, I keep saying we, NASSP pushed this very closely with Rep. Davis and Rep. Balto of Illinois to try to get this implemented here. We thought this was very important. Obviously, other people can help lead schools, but your main school leaders are going to be the ones that are in the school every day, working with the students, working with the faculty, sitting down with them and making sure they understand what's happening at the ground level. ESSA, as I said before too, also includes an optional 3% reservation for Title II funds. So states are actually able to allocate 3% of their Title II funds just to go to school leaders. This is a huge win for NASSP here. This is a good chunk. We always want to see that number higher, but now the problem is not just, this looks great, but how we make states do that and make them understand the importance of that. Just having the ability to do so doesn't drive anything forward until it's actually done. So how are we going to make sure that these states do allocate this 3% and let them know how important this 3% is? My organization, as well as the National Association of Elementary School Principals, or NAESP, as Mary said earlier, we work very closely. We actually work in the same building, so we're working very closely with one another. Have conducted over 20 meetings with Capitol Hill, important members of Capitol Hill, appropriations committees here to try to find a way to ensure that this funding is protected. We're going to keep doing that moving forward, especially post-election. I think the first meeting I have scheduled for Monday is a post-election meeting to kind of build up what we're going to do here moving forward. So it's going to be an interesting way to see what's going to happen here. Once again, current CR expires on the 9th of December. So this advocacy needs to happen now. They're not going to, Congress moves slow, but then they're going to try to move fast, because once Christmas rolls around, everybody wants to get out of D.C. Do you have a question, Rick?
Yeah, can you, maybe Mary could help add us to any distribution lists you have? So that
I would be happy to, actually.
Yeah, then we can advocate in our
Definitely.
own
I will actually provide my email at the end here, if everybody would like to email me, or if anybody's curious, come meet me afterwards. I have a bunch of cards sitting here in my pocket. I'd love to get everybody on our distribution list here and give all you guys our information. I will show you some of the other resources that we are able to provide you guys here in the future as well. So we'd be happy to do that. So if we're just looking at funding for Title II Part A. This is something I just kind of threw up together here. I thought since we're in New Jersey, we might as well use New Jersey. Title II funding for Title II Part A funding is actually going to be developed for a 20 to 80 population to poverty formula. That's they're going to look at poverty in each state and kind of figure that out. The current ESSA authorization of it was $2.295 billion. Unfortunately, I don't think that number is not going to happen, as we have said before. So Congress actually, the Senate approved a bill that would actually cut it by $200 million, while the House approved a bill that would cut it by $300 million. So if we look at these numbers for New Jersey, the numbers they could receive here in thousands of dollars and millions here. So you have the FY16 current law would be 51,493. The president's budget request is actually lower than that. The ESSA authorization obviously would be highest, but then when we look at the Senate's authorization here, it is a huge drop by about $5 million, which is just an unbelievable amount of money that can be used for so many great resources and things like that. So it's very important that we find a way to kind of ensure that, like I said before, just ensure these funds are allocated correctly, and reach out to our members of Congress to let them know that, you know, you're listening. And NASSP can talk to members of Congress all they want, but whenever they hear from a constituent, that carries so much more weight every single time. I was recently on a webinar that said, even a Facebook post or an email from one constituent, once you get up to 5, everybody in the office starts listening. You know what I mean? You have legislative assistants that are looking at these emails and things like that. That's when they really start to focus on those things. And 1 gets the ball rolling, 5 gets it pushed very hard downhill. So that's really a good way to do this. As I was saying before here, actually, I actually provided a Title II breakdown for every state, so if everybody wants to look, you can click right there and find your state and see what these numbers are going to be. It provides a breakdown for everyone. And we actually have a Title II action alert right now at NASSP. So this is a way that you can actually go to our website. You don't have to be a member. Anybody's able to use this. It's called our Principals Legislative Action Center. We have one right now actually advocating for Title II Part A funding. So it's a little piece that you can go type in your email, not your email, but type in your address. You should find out what member of Congress you have, and all you literally have to do is click send, and you send them an email right away. It takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It's really quick. It's really effective, but it's a really good way to make sure people are reaching out to their congressman. It's really easy. We actually wrote it thinking most principals would use it, so you're able to reform the message if you'd like. So you can go in there and change it. Like I said, it's really quick, really effective. We know how strapped for time everybody is, but we want to make sure people understand the importance of reaching out to your members of Congress, and they will listen. I worked on Capitol Hill, and trust me, I can't tell you how many phone calls I've had with somebody that just, you know, they had a snowmobile trail running in their backyard they didn't like, and things like that. So if you can get more people, more than one person even reaching out, they're going to listen. They know how important it is. This was a big election for some people, and 2 years later it's going to be a big one again for them. So they need to make sure that they're listening to their constituents and how important that is here. So as we move forward here, we're going to look at Title II Part A state grants. States actually have a number of different ways they can spend these dollars. The main alignment for these funds are going to be to recruitment, preparation, and retention. However, principal preparation and professional development, but these things are actually going to have to compete with teacher dollars as well. So that is always a difficult chunk there, I guess. At NASSP, we like to work very closely with our teacher organizations. However, it sometimes does get difficult when you're both kind of fighting for the same chunk of the pie there. So this is something that we're working very closely with our teacher organizations with. And I suggest that you all do as well, is reach out to them in your state, find a way that you can work together. Principal preparation is a really key point to keeping good teachers in good schools. If you want to retain effective teachers, you have to have effective principals, and that's the only way to do that. Otherwise, they're going to leave somewhere else. I mean, we all know there's going to be a teacher shortage at some point, possibly, and good teachers are going to be in very high demand. So having an effective principal will help an effective teacher stay at an effective school overall. So that's very important. On September 27th, 2016, the Department of Education actually released a guidance on Title II. This was huge. My organization, as well as a number of other principal organizations, had been requesting this from the Department of Education for years, just trying to help them understand helping states understand local education agencies. How can these funds be spent? It's great to read that these funds can be spent for professional development for principals and things like that, but actually breaking down and giving ideas and examples of this is how these dollars can be spent, and this is where this can go, and this is what you can do with them. Really provide some guidance to these places. It's laid out in 3 parts: support for educators, educator equity, and strengthening Title II Part A investments. And as I say guidance, I want to make sure that everybody's aware here that a guidance is not a binding. This is just a guidance. You know, this isn't a regulation. This is just kind of let us kind of hold your hand here and guide you a little bit. These aren't written in stone. The department is not doing it, but it's just a good way to show forward to give you a little framework of what you can do with these funds. So as we kind of break down the guidance here, our pros for principal development, it strongly encourages each state education agency to devote a significant portion of state funds to improving curriculum. It actually lists that in the guidance. For us, that's great. I mean, to have that in there, to have to say that is very important for states to know just how important school leaders and principals are, to make sure they're aware of that. It does specifically note the 3% set aside that I mentioned before that can be set aside for LEA sub-grants. Once again, that sounds really good until we have to make sure that states actually do that. So that goes back to the advocacy part, as I stated before, making sure states know this 3% set aside is there and knowing that they should do it. It also emphasizes the effectiveness of principal pipelines. It talks about training principals and how are we going to make sure that they're ready for the job they're going to undertake. Principals, as I was saying before, have an extremely difficult job with many facets of the job they have to deal with. How are we going to make sure that we're training them to deal with faculty, deal with students, deal with parents? I mean, things like just dealing with a whole community, I mean, is always a difficult situation for them. So how are these programs actually going to bring them in and teach them about what you need to deal with in every facet that you're going to look at taking this job? For developmental academies themselves, as I mentioned before, there are some really positive things in here. State education agencies are able to reserve up to 2%, as I mentioned before, of their total Title II allocation to establish, expand, or to establish or expand teacher, principal, or other school leader preparation academies. Now, with the previous set-aside, that means 4.85% of Title II Part A funds can be used to establish or expand academies that train school leaders. If we really want to drive home the importance of a school pipeline, that's a lot of funding. That's a good chunk of funding that can go to help really promote training principals and driving these pipelines. If you want a good principal pipeline, you got to start at prep programs. You got to start at ground one and build up from there. And that's really what this is offering the chance to do. Now, if you do want to spend these dollars on this, there is a new requirement in ESSA that a state authorizer must be, I guess, appointed by the governor. And then state authorizers will have to work with these prep academies to ensure that they are following the goals that are set forward by the state. Now, what it sounds like right now is that prep academies would actually establish their own goals, give it to the state authorizer, and they would decide if they are in line with what they're trying to do as a state. Strategies on how to actually select these authorizers are provided in the guidance. We are not sure how states are going to go about this yet. This is something else I would recommend that prep academies sit down with their governor, with their state education agency, and say, who are we looking at as our state authorizer? How are we going to select this person? We need to make sure we select someone that understands where we're coming from, but also is, tough and fair and things of that nature. But this is something I would highly suggest talking with your state governments about, making sure you know who they're going to select, making sure it's someone that understands education and the work it takes to properly train teachers and principals here. So that's very important. So what does this all actually mean when we kind of break this all down in the end? The guidance really lays out the importance of retaining and recruiting effective principals and school leaders, which is great. Like we said before, we really want to see that. However, can groups advocate using this part for that 3% allocation, as I mentioned before? What about that 2% allocation for principal prep academies? Will states actually do that as well? That's the only way to make sure that happens is advocacy, and that has to be done at the grassroots level by you and by those that you guys are training and things like that. What emphasis will be put on preparation academies? What are some states' rules going to be? What are state authorizers going to look like? What are their criteria going to be on judging these preparation academies and their effectiveness? That is something that you're all, once again, going to have to sit down with your state education agencies, your governor's office to figure out. And lastly, how will teachers get involved? And as I was saying before, in regard to teacher leadership, school culture, and classroom evaluations, a fact that 95% of the time, teachers report their principals are the main reason they stay at their school. So like I said before here, if you want to retain effective teachers, you need effective principals. And teachers need to feel that they're being fostered and developed as well, just as the principals need to be done. So if you want to have good teachers at a good school, that needs to happen. So our question is, can we all work with one another, with teachers, to encourage state education agencies and have teachers encourage them as well to make meaningful investments for principal, professional development, mentoring, residency, and preparation programs? Us at NASSP, we are working on this right now, as I said before. We think that this is something that we can all work together to come out of on top with. But once again, at your own state level, it's something that you need to meet with your teachers groups and figure out a way to deal with, to talk about that with them. And as I say, all these things that you need to do, if you need any help with this, please contact my organization. We are happy to put you in touch with the right groups. We'll figure out where you need to go. My organization wants to be a resource to help principals and to help all of you in training effective principals. And that's what we want to do at NASSP. So do not shy away from shooting me an email, giving me a call. That's what NASSP is there for. We want to be a usable resource for all of you moving forward when you're figuring out what you're doing and trying to figure out here with that. So as we wrap up Title II Part A here, this is from the Walls Foundation, and it actually discusses building the principal pipeline. And you can see in the very beginning here, it starts with higher education and principal training and high quality training and internships overall. So then it goes on to desirable candidates. I don't want to go through it all with all of you, but as you can see, it's a two-way relationship, almost going the whole way here. As we develop, the school district is working with our higher education prep programs and say, what do your principals need to know for your school, for your students, and moving forward here to drive achievement at your school? As we said before, we think this is a great layout of how important professional development is for principals, and we think that starting, like I said before, principal prep programs are kind of the foundation, and you have to build from that foundation and move up and keep building it to really have someone be effective moving forward. Jumping to Title IV here, So Title IV, 21st Century Schools, and looking at Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grants, or SSAE grants. If anybody gets confused by any of my acronyms, I apologize. I have been in DC for about 4 years now, so we're kind of an alphabet soup city up there, so everything has a shorthand. So ESSA actually consolidated a number of programs authorized under No Child Left Behind into a $1.65 billion block grant program referred to as SSAE grants. These funds can be used to provide technical assistance and capacity building to local education agencies. They can identify and eliminate state barriers for coordination and integration of programs, and they can support LEAs and provide activities and programs in each of these 3 buckets, and we call them the 3 buckets here. So the first is promoting well-rounded education for students, promoting safe and healthy schools, and helping to, I guess, promote, once again, the effective use of technology in schools. As we keep moving forward in the technological world, this is going to be more and more important. Everybody believes providing students with the proper access to even broadband access and things like that moving forward, and trying to help close the homework gap and things of that nature. So that is one of the other things that can be used here. Funds are actually distributed by formula to states, and the idea is when $1.65 billion is authorized under ESSA, no district would receive less than $10,000. Now, we run into the same problem here with Title II Part A, Title IV as we did with Title II Part A. $1.65 billion would be a wonderful number to have this appropriated at. Once again, though, we run into the problem of the Senate and the House control the purse strings on this, and as I said before, they are in budget talks as soon as they get back Monday. So we're going to see exactly what this is allocated at, and I have some more on this in just a little bit, discussing the funding for this. So districts are, some LEAs are actually able to receive up to or even more than $30,000. The requirements for that are, if they are able to, there are some limits on what they can spend this on. Only at least 20% has to go to a well-rounded education, 20% would have to go to safe and healthy schools, and up to 15% can be used on actually getting hardware for the use of technology. So you can only use 15% of those dollars to buy tablets, computers, things of that nature. The reason for that is if you're receiving up to $30,000, they believe that you should incorporate all 3 buckets rather than if you're just receiving the 10 or whatever the number is you're receiving, that you can focus more on one than the other. So 30,000 is quite a large number for them here, so they want to make sure that they're able to do this. So the President's budget actually calls for $500 million. So we're going to look here, far below what we were hoping for. And the Senate actually appropriated only $300 million, where the House actually appropriated $1 billion. So all below the $1.65 billion. The House number is the highest at $1 billion, which is a bit surprising to us, but hopefully we can at least stay somewhat close to that. We actually, just a quick side note here, my organization has recently joined a Title IV coalition with a number of other education organizations out in Washington, D.C. to push for this funding to be stayed at the authorized levels. It's a brand new coalition formed by, like I said before, a number of education organizations. We're hoping that we can keep this driving forward and try to keep this funding as close to 1.65 as possible. But as I did before, I want to show you all what these Title IV funds could look like for New Jersey. So I have the $300 million obviously for the Senate level, the $500 for the President level. The $700 is one that NASSP just requested in case we kind of had a cut it down the middle a little bit there, and the $1 billion for the House level, and then the estimated FY 2017 amount that would be if it were ESSA. So if you look at the $300 million appropriation here that the Senate talked about allocating, they wouldn't even meet that 10,000 threshold minimum requirement. And barely, looking at it closer, barely any state would. Now, if they don't have the $1.65 billion, the idea that they have the 10,000 threshold is probably pretty unlikely. But still, $6,700 isn't a lot for a school district to really enact any new policies or anything like that that could really help them. At the $500 million, we're getting actually at that threshold 11,000, but that can only go to, if that goes to one district, then every other district in New Jersey is kind of left out in the cold here, is the idea. When we get a little closer, if you look at but once again, look at the estimated FY 2017 amount compared to the Senate amount. That's a $20,000 difference, basically, over $20,000 difference here on what these funds can be used for. I mean, $37,000, you can split that across 3 different school districts in New Jersey, and you can see some real change there. I mean, $10,000 to a school district is a lot of money to enact new policies. And one nice thing is, I'll discuss later, they can actually use these funds in consortium with other districts. So you could have 2 districts kind of combining together to maybe form an anti-bullying program, or to form a new STEM education program, and things like that. I'll go into that a little further here. I also took a look at, I believe Monroe Township School District is the closest one to where we are right now. I'm very shaking her head, so I did good there on that one at least. So let's say if they were under the FY 2017 ESSA authorized amount, they could actually receive $18,000 to help their school district here, which is a good, I think if you offered $18,000 to many school districts, I don't think you'd have any that would turn that money away here from the federal government here. So once again, I actually provided a breakdown of all these numbers for you. These are actually coming from something called CRS report, Congressional Research Service. It's a research service on Capitol Hill, so you guys can actually take a look at these yourselves on here. And we once again have a action alert that's going out on these, just as we do on Title II. These are our only 2 action alerts right now, so if you go to our PLAC page, our Legislative Advocacy page, these are the only 2 you're going to see at the Title II and the Title IV. Once again, we wrote it from the perspective of principals, but really quick, if you guys want to go in there, just send in another letter to your member of Congress letting them know that you're keeping an eye on this funding as budget talks begin here and continue to move forward. So we're going to take a quick look here at what do each of these things kind of mean here. You know, well-rounded education sounds great, but what are the programs you can actually use these for? So there's a number of different usages. College and career programs, financial literacy, STEM programs. I won't read them all to you guys, but well-rounded education really can provide a lot of different methods for how are you going to make students more well-rounded as a student overall and as a person. This can include social and emotional learning and things like that to kind of help them develop more as a person overall. We've seen from now for a long time, social and emotional learning has become very popular, not just developing a student's minds and abilities for academia, but also outside of that as well. How do we help them with their emotions and make them feel empathy for others and develop them into a well-rounded, all-around person that can be used for things like this in well-rounded education. Once again, all this flexibility for well-rounded education sounds really good. If you're getting less than $10,000 for it, it's going to be really difficult to implement a new financial literacy program. It's going to be extremely difficult to do something like an environmental education program. I mean, for something like that, you'd imagine you'd have to get kids out and moving along and stuff like that in the world of actually experiencing the environment. Things like this aren't going to be achievable with that lower funding. So how is that going to be taken care of? Safe and healthy schools are the second bucket here. These usually include things like how do you promote a better school climate? How are you going to take care of your students and make sure they feel safe and supported at your school so that they can have a better learning environment overall? Drug and violence prevention, school-based mental health services, suicide and bullying prevention. Once again, these can be used in conjunction. These funds can be used in conjunction with one another. So maybe you could have 2 districts close to one another work together to form their own bullying prevention program that they can use together to kind of form their own way of moving forward here. And the last one, the effective use of technology. Once again, you can't use more than 15% of these funds to purchase hardware, software, anything like that, to locate tablets and things like that. This one is actually one of the ones where professional development for principals, administrators, and teachers is actually really focused on in the effective use of technology. The reason for that being principals and faculty, many are better now, but some are still lagging behind in their ability to use the most up-to-date technologies. Funds in this one can actually be used specifically for professional development to teach principals and teachers and faculty on how to use these new technologies. So that's a very interesting way to kind of move forward here and figure out how can they learn and then teach their students in turn how to better use these technologies. So the Title IV guidance, recently the Department of Education also released the Title IV guidance. The Department of Education in about a 3-week or 4-week period released about 6 guidances. So we were very busy over at NASSP, but they released a bunch of these. But we're happy to see them. We want to, like we said, we want to have this information out for all of you as well as state education season for our members as well. So funds actually, it states under each bucket may be used for professional development. And that's kind of an interesting idea here that really makes Title IV a new thing, a new area we want to push for principals and school leaders. I want to read a quote here from the guidance actually. An allowable use of funds under each of the 3 content areas may include but are not limited to professional development for teachers and administrators and school leaders. So that's huge to be able to have that put in there. And I'm kind of going to break down in here a little bit how professional development in each section can be used to help student achievement in those areas. I have a second quote here as well, just to really drive home the point that you can do this. Supporting high-quality professional development for educators, school leaders, and administrators to personalize learning and improve academic achievement. So, once again, we do know that these can be used. As I said before, SSAE, well actually I haven't said this before, but the last interesting part about this guidance is that these grants can be used in conjunction with other titles as well. So, for example, let's say that you, as I said before, the effective use of technology and professional development can be used to, how are we going to implement new technologies? How do we teach our students how to use these effectively? What are the best ways to do that? Now, if you want to actually do a new financial literacy program or a new STEM program, professional development for principals and your teachers is very important to finding out the better ways for them to go learn how to implement a new program. Or social and emotional learning, as I mentioned before, training them on how to do that effectively and efficiently and instill that in schools. So they can also be used in the second bucket to promote safe and healthy school climates. If a new bullying prevention program is going to be implemented, maybe you train that principal on a new popular method that's been going around to new schools and things like that. So principals can be educated and have themselves professionally developed through all these areas and by using these funds. It's just making sure that people understand that these areas and improving principals in these areas will drive student achievement. And that's the point that you need to drive home, is that principals have a direct impact on student achievement, and then making sure that's important. And as I was saying, these can be used in conjunction with other titles. So let's say Title II, Part A, you're going to use something to promote a new professional development program. Let's just say, once again, for social and emotional learning, to kind of teach a principal how to better go about teaching your faculty, explaining to your faculty and your teachers the importance of social and emotional learning, as well as instilling that in your school and having students understand the importance of that as well. You can use Title II Part A funds as well as some of these Title IV funds together to help drive that program. So you can actually kind of double up on funds here and use those together to properly train and develop principals and educators. So that's a really interesting way. That's something that hasn't really been done before in a lot of these old methods here. So being able to use these in conjunction with one another is a very interesting and new method that we are very excited to see states kind of implement and see what they're going to do with that. And hopefully they can do that in creative new ways that we haven't seen before. So in the end, I keep talking about advocacy up here. I'm sure you guys haven't heard advocacy said this much before in your entire lives. So this is very important though for everybody. What can actually be influenced by your organizations and things like that? As I was saying before, I want to drive home the point. This needs to be done now. There's only 16 House legislative days left. This is going to happen quick. This is going to happen more quickly than we think it's going to. So school performance measures, once again, Title I, sitting down with your state education agencies and making sure they understand what you're looking at and what is important in your state and for principals to be judged upon in that state, making sure they understand that. Title II funding and Title IV funding, I think, kind of go hand in hand. Talking with your congressional representatives. Once again, we have that great legislative action center. If anybody wants to use it, please do. Just making sure you reach out to them though and letting them know, and talking with those that you represent, making sure they know how important it is to get the grassroots mobilized here, to make sure that, you know, people always say Congress doesn't listen. Trust me, they will. If you get people contacting them, they will listen. That they understand that. Principal evaluation systems moving forward with your state. Once again, how our principals going to be evaluated, how our principal prep programs are going to be evaluated moving forward with state authorizers and things like that, and resources for digital learning and literacy and digital learning. So how are funds in these areas going to be properly allocated? How are they going to be used? What is going to be the effectiveness of them? So NASSP also came out with a recent tool that I want to show everybody really quickly. It's called our ESSA toolkit. So basically everything I broke down today is going to be in this toolkit. And you don't have to be a member of ours to join this. It's literally on our website. All you have to do is go to our advocacy page and it'll be the first thing you see. So I just want to give a quick walkthrough on this for everybody real quick so you guys can see. We're very excited about this. This took us a long time to develop, but this is really a great breakdown here. So on our website here, this is our ESSA toolkit page. We provide numerous different things that you guys can use to help you. So I went through a lot of facts and figures today. I'm sure everybody didn't write down the exact numbers of everything. But let's say that you want to go figure out exactly how much funding is going to be in Title II again. We have a full Title II fact sheet. We actually have a fact sheet for every title that directly impacts principals. So I think we go through Title 4 or 5, and you guys will be able to see that we have a full breakdown of ESSA as well, and just an overview for you guys as well, so you guys can have this. These are all downloadable to PDF. They explain what each title does. They provide you the funding breakdown of each one, as you can see here, the different parts of the title and what the funds there are going to look like, as well as how to go about implementing these funds. And at the bottom of each one, you're going to find opportunities to advocate. Once again, how should you advocate with your members like that? How are you going to be able to reach out to them and things like that? All of these are downloadable to a PDF in these fact sheets. Makes it really easy for you guys to kind of print and go. We go up to Title V here. As I said, we have a complete overview of ESSA, which is really simple. Just a really quick, nice breakdown for everybody to have there that you guys can all see moving forward. So that's really nice. We also have model legislation. This is one of the parts we're actually most excited about. As states are going forward, trying to figure out how to implement and what they're going to do for their accountability systems and what their state accountability systems are going to look like, we actually wrote 3 model bills here that they can pull from to actually use when they're writing these systems. You can actually download these to a Word doc and you can pull right from them. We welcome plagiarism in this part of it, I guess is the way we look at it. But we wrote these to specifically help principals in this area to make sure that people understand the part, like I said, the part of professional development. So all 3 of these can be used to do that. As I said before, each one is up here. They have a breakdown of each one at the top. You can download them onto a Word doc, and if you bring them to your state education agency and say, hey, I think this is really neat here, we want you to make sure you guys are aware of this, and they can pull right from it, just use them right in our accountability system and right in their own state parts that they're going to write here. So we're really, really excited about that. We actually have a communication kit. Not every principal in the world is an expert communicator, and hard to believe, I know, but this actually helps. You can load up here. And all it basically has in here, though, it has a social media breakdown, how you can actually use and frame your message on social media, and use the power of Facebook and Twitter now to kind of get your voice out a little bit more. It actually has a way to help you develop op-eds for your local newspapers and things like that to kind of broaden your message and try to reach a whole new group of people you might not have contacted before. And apparently it can't be reached right now, so hopefully our website's not down. But I promise you 99% of the time it'll work if you go to it. The communications kit, though, once again, also just develops a way of how do you frame your message? Most people, when they want to send a message to their member of Congress or they want to talk to their state representatives, they get really nervous and they think, oh, this is, they're not going to understand what I'm talking about. This is a way we want you to go forward and use this communication kit to say, how are you going to tell them your story in an effective way to make them understand how important this is? They need to hear your story, and they need to hear your ask when you do this. You need to have an ask for this. And that's one of the biggest problems we see when we bring new people for advocacy. They tell a great story, and they tell them how important these funds are and things like that. But then they never ask for them. And when you never ask for them, you're not going to receive them. So it's making sure that we can help everybody understand how do you develop your story and actually develop a good ask for that. And lastly here, the state website page, this will be a map at some point too. We're working on doing that. It looks a little kind of funky right now. But every state actually has their own, most states have their own ESSA webpage that they've been working on. Because I said before, states should be developing their plans now. They need to be working on it now. If not, they're going to be way behind the 8 ball when this moves forward here. So if we just click, let's go to New Jersey right here again. We click on New Jersey's. We know that NJPSA has been working with the New Jersey State Board of Ed here, so we know that they have actually a really well done page here and that they've been working. And you can actually see where they stand with ESSA right now, what they're working on, what they're looking at. So each state can do that themselves if you just want to go there and find your own page here. So that's our ESSA toolkit here. Like I said, it's a great resource. We want everyone to start using it. It's really important. Like I said, it just provides you a great overview and everything that can be done here. We do have some recorded webinars. Our organization was actually licensed out to produce these webinars on ESSA when it first came out. We have one on ESSA Title I, Title II, and Title IV. These were formed early in the year. They may be a little outdated, but they are archived on our website. They will still provide you with good overall information that can help you out with things like this. Like we said, we have some new numbers now, some new guidances that we see, but overall they're still very helpful. I do want to mention that in 2017, from July 9th through July 11th, NASSP and NAESP are partnering together for the first, in conjunction, the National Principals Conference. So this will be the largest gathering of principals from elementary and secondary and middle levels in Philadelphia. So it's going to be in a really fun area if you guys have never been there. Registration is open now if you'd like to attend. There will be wonderful exhibitions. You're actually able to rent booths on the floor if you want to have your own exhibitions or anything like that. Please, that is all on this website here, principalsconference.org. We're really excited for it. We want to get as many people out there as possible. If you really want to talk to principals, this is the place to do it. They're all going to be here from all around the nation, and this is going to be really, really important to being able to, to getting your message across to those principals that are there at that time. And lastly, I just want to provide everyone once again with my contact information here. I'm the manager of advocacy there. My Twitter handle's there again, and my email is scottz@nassp.org. My name is Zach Scott. If anybody wants to email me and call me Scott, that's fine. It happens all the time. So don't worry about that. But if anybody has any questions that we don't get to answer here today or anything like that, or you have any other inquiries in the future about ESSA, please do not hesitate to shoot me an email. NASSP wants to be a resource. I want to be a resource to help all of you, and we think that's really what we're here for, is to be resources to help principals and help you help principals. So that's what we're here for, and I'm happy to take any questions now if anybody has anything or anything like that they have questions about. I overburdened everyone with too many numbers. So talking advocacy is always so much fun. But no, like I said, if anybody has any questions in the future, please just shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to talk with you, or give us a call, and I'll be happy to chat with you as well. So thank you.